Welcome to HP Fanfiction. Support me by subscribing the channel. Also, like and share the video to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. Harry Potter must not go back to Hogwarts. Dan had been taking mental notes as he'd been listening and rhymed off a few questions that Harry's story had thrown up. Okay, why would he call you Harry Potter? Traveling halfway around the world to give a warning makes no sense either. If he then pops away and doesn't tell you what you're being warned against. I'll probably have more, but that should do to get us started. Harry was eating his breakfast as he had told those around the table of his encounter. All house elves call me Harry Potter. They just see me as a wizard, and I can't hide my family ring from them. He was interrupted by Remus almost choking on his coffee. The tears in his eyes this time weren't emotionally driven as he stared at Harry. "You're head of House Potter. I thought Sirius was the one who arranged all this." "It was actually Sirius who answered. It's okay, people, I'll vouch for Remus. Moony, there are things going on that I can't tell you about. Just know that it's in relation to my duties as a godfather. Everyone sitting at this table wants what's best for Harry. I know you do too." Looking around at those present, Remus had to agree with that assessment. Barchoke, the Grangers and Sirius were all self-evident. Henrika provided her own reason. "He's my boss, Remus, and a nicer, kinder employer you could never hope to find." Henrika's pout in Harry's direction would have had grown wizards on their knees, proposing marriage. He just continued eating breakfast before making a comment that brought the levity back to the table. Still not getting a raise, Barchoke was delighted to see how well his son was dealing with news of this proposed threat. They had expected some backlash from the darker families. Here was an indication of their plotting. Distance would be no problem to a house elf. The fact it was obviously going against its master's wishes gives us some indication of the seriousness of the problem. Harry spotted Hermione putting her knife and fork down in disgust and reached for her hand. Her boyfriend was certain he knew what was bothering her. "Hermione, we talked about this. It's all about perception. Can you honestly say that poor creature was not a slave? He was going to shut his own ears in an oven door because he disobeyed his master and warned you. We both know this is wrong, Harry." This was an issue they had talked about and obviously not resolved as well as Harry had thought. "You know my opinion on slaves. It's every bit as strong as yours. Goblins would rather die than be enslaved, and it's something we would never inflict on anyone else. Yes, House Potter has house elves, but I refuse to consider them slaves." Harry squeezed her hand to prevent the interruption he knew was coming. "Potter elves have been part of my family for generations. You've met some of them. Would you say they were happy?" She was left with no other answer than to agree. "Most were so happy to see us, they were in tears." Remembering something he had read, Harry tried a different tactic with his girlfriend. "Supposing your mum and dad decided Crawley wasn't for them anymore, both then joined a charity that saw them treating people for free, would that make them slaves?" "That's not the same, Harry. Mum and dad could leave whenever they wanted. I told my elves the same, and the tears this time were certainly not happy ones. They are doing a job they love and having all their needs taken care of. They neither want nor need wages. Freedom to them means rejection, shame, and exile from their family. They look after us and we look after them. Everybody's happy. That's the way it's supposed to work." "Hermione, I do agree that there will be wizards who will abuse the system, but I can't do anything about that, yet. You've seen the fight we've had just to kick goblin relations up a notch. Recognition that house elves have rights too will be a much harder fight. It's a challenge I'm willing to fight, but now is not the time. Are you okay with this? Are we good?" Those last three words cut right through any objection Hermione had left. She needed Harry to believe her on this. "Of course we're good, Harry. And I'm sorry if you thought for even 1 second we might not be. I know you would never mistreat elves, just as I know you will be trying to help this Dobby. I wasn't angry at you. Just a system that allows a person to legally mistreat someone who's in their care." Along with relief, Harry felt a hand on his shoulder. As well as that gesture of support, Dan had some kind words to match. "Just keep talking things out, you two. You won't go far wrong doing that. Now what do we do about this warning?" Harry looked toward his father, getting a nod of agreement before continuing. He thought his father would leave the decision up to him. It didn't hurt to check, though. If Hogwarts is going to be in danger, she'll need her champion. I have friends in that castle, and 2 new Potter Scholarship students will be looking to me for help with settling in. Unless we get more information, it will be a case of keeping our eyes open. Henrika will be there full-time, with Sirius, Cursebreaker Weasley and Master Pitsley paying regular visits. We tell Neville and Padma what we know, but any more could see rumors starting. Rumors that would grow arms, legs and a dozen fire-breathing heads before they were done. Hermione was now very worried. She looked at both her parents. I want to return with Harry. We'll have adult support and a method to get out of there if anything happens. Her parents held a conversation with a few glances before Dan spoke. At the moment, all we've got is some vague warning from a creature whose mental stability is at best questionable. We reserve the right to change our mind if more information becomes available, and we'll drag you from that school if we suspect you're not telling us everything. Barchoke interrupted before Dan could say any more. It would actually be me who would be doing the dragging, something I can assure you I would do if I thought they were in danger. I have constant reports from the castle. We won't be missing anything. Hermione was so pleased she was going back to Hogwarts with Harry. She would actually have agreed to just about anything. That evening, the 7 youngsters sat around a campfire on the beach. They'd spent their day swimming, playing games, and exploring the island. All were knackered yet far too excited to sleep. Stories of Florida, the Black Sea and Rome weren't helping to lower those excitement levels. That all 7 of them would be going on to Tokyo was also a much-discussed topic, especially since Harry had given Susan and Hannah their belated birthday gifts of a shopping voucher. The adults were all lounging back on chairs. Glowing lights now festooned the palm-thatched umbrellas that had provided shade earlier in the day. Barchoke, Amelia and Augusta were sitting at the end table, a silencing charm up so their conversation was private. Barchoke, if even half of this is true, it's going to be the biggest political storm ever to hit magical Britain. Amelia, we have checked our facts. It's all true. I had to convince Miss Skeeter not to offer any conjecture, present the facts, and let the readers make up their own minds. I take it you 2 already have. Augusta was fuming, and had struggled to hold her temper until she finished the book, something that she and Amelia had spent the entire day reading. How can we send our children to that school? Something needs to be done about Dumbledore and his Death Eater sidekick, Snape. Snape is no longer a problem, and we're hoping most parents will have the same reaction as you. We saw this as the best way of getting Dumbledore out the castle. Only the parents of the children who attend really have the power to oust him. The head of the DMLE had sat taking notes as she read the book, looking for things she could bring Dumbledore up on charges for. Barchoke's first remark set Amelia's alarm bells ringing. Could you explain why Snape is no longer a problem? That would be because we have him. This news was greeted by silence, so Barchoke explained how events had unfolded. I tricked Dumbledore into revealing Snape's identity. The old wizard still has no idea I have that information. The minister actually helped with this deceit by banning Dumbledore from the ball. I originally had an agreement for Dumbledore to give me the name on that night. I have now put him off until term starts. Augusta loved the deviousness of that. This book gets published on the 1st of September, leaving Dumbledore nothing to bargain with. You still haven't explained how you ended up with Snape. He decided to run and was in the process of emptying his vault when we arrested him. The charges were crimes committed in the name of Voldemort, namely costing Harry's parents their lives. He really is a despicable piece of work, the ultimate Slytherin, with a foot firmly in both camps, he gleefully told his master Voldemort. The prophecy, and then nearly soiled himself when he discovered Lily's child matched the very same prophecy. The Goblin's disgust was obvious as he talked about Snape. He's convinced himself that Lily Evans was the love of his life, and one day she would have realized this and left James Potter for him. I knew that couple well, and that view is nothing but an utter fantasy of a sick, twisted and delusional mind. He begged Voldemort to spare Lily's life, not caring about James or Harry. Snape didn't trust Voldemort to keep his word, though, so he also approached Dumbledore and confessed everything. Dumbledore actually told a group of us in his own office that the power of love would defeat Voldemort. He must have ate up the story of Severus loving Lily with a spoon. A shudder of revulsion passed through the goblin at the thought of all this bartering in the name of love. He was sure neither of those two men had any acquaintance with the emotion. Whether Dumbledore believed him or not, that didn't stop the old wizard blackmailing Snape to spy for him, and he then kept his spy on a short leash at Hogwarts. In return, he told the Wizengamot his spy was no Death Eater. Amelia was almost afraid to ask this question, but knew she had to. "What did you do with Snape?" "We sentenced him to 5 years. At the end of that time, both Neville and Harry will be of age, if they want to take things further. We thought of having him toiling in the dragon pens, but that would be a waste of a resource. He's working in our potions labs. Last report I got, he was asking if his sentence could be increased. Apparently he's never been so happy. I can arrange for you to meet him to confirm any facts, provided you can keep it quiet until the book is published." "Well, next week I'm in Tokyo with the gang, so it would need to be after that anyway. The minister has already distanced himself and the ministry from Dumbledore, so no damage limitation to be done there." Content that Snape was out of the picture, Augusta wanted to know if the revelation that had her asking for a sherry before noon was really true. Albus Dumbledore and Gellert Grindelwald were really lovers. "Oh yes, that was actually a beautiful piece of investigative journalism by Miss Skeeter in Godric's Hollow." Hermione entered the leaky cauldron on Harry's arm, instantly spotting Professor McGonagall with the two people they were here to meet. The boy was as hyper as a Springer Spaniel being taken for a promised walk. He was literally bouncing with excitement. The girl reminded Hermione of the iconic poster for her favorite musical. There was a haunted look about Luna's eyes that just shouted Cosette. Her clothes were certainly clean and well-fitting, but of such an odd assortment, Parvati would be left desperate for a chance to restyle the girl. "Good morning, Professor." "Hi, Luna and Colin. I'm Harry. This is Hermione, my girlfriend, and these two are Sirius Black and Professor Hobson." Luna got in before Colin could say anything. "Didn't you used to be in the Hobgoblins, Mr. Boardman? My daddy says it was your fault his favorite band split." "Oh no, that wasn't me, Luna. Though if someone had hit me in the ear with a turnip when I was on stage, I probably would have retired too." This earned Sirius a wide smile from the girl before the flash from Colin's camera blinded half the pub. "Mr. Creevy, what did I tell you about that camera?" "Sorry, Professor McGonagall, I've to save it until I get to Hogwarts." "Precisely, your family saw the leaky cauldron and Diagon Alley on your induction day. There is no need for photographs today." "But Professor, they never got to meet Harry." It was Harry who answered the excitable boy. "That's fine, Colin, but you've now taken a picture for them. We have a lot to do today, including meeting some of our friends for ice cream later. Are we ready to go?" Harry felt Hermione squeeze his arm, drawing his attention to Henrika taking Luna by the hand. With Madame Malkin's being their first stop, both were sure she would see Luna kitted out properly for Hogwarts. This was all about getting these two settled into the castle. Turning up in the right clothes was important for making those first impressions. Ollivander's was every bit as creepy as Hermione remembered, though their circumstances didn't help with that. Old Ollivander was already pretty miffed that Harry didn't get a wand from him. The weird wizard actually got quite stroppy when Harry then refused to show the wandmaker his knife. Professor McGonagall had to intervene and remind Ollivander he had 2 customers in his shop. Colin didn't improve things any by insisting he wanted a knife like Harry too. Having left Flourish and Blots to last, they joined with their friends for ice cream before facing their final task. There were now 9 students at the table, the adults wisely taking one of their own. Minerva was fascinated and a little shocked with Amelia's Tales of Tokyo. Augusta also proclaimed this as her best summer in many years. The Patils both said they'd considered Tokyo and were delighted their girls had the opportunity to go, but they had no complaints about choosing to spend a week in Rome instead. Henrika's comment that Rome was a city she'd always wanted to visit meant Sirius would be arranging that for next year, when she hopefully wouldn't be so busy with Gringotts. Harry was pleased to notice Colin had quietened down somewhat. probably because of all the girls he was now surrounded by. Luna, though, remained really quiet. "Are you looking forward to Hogwarts, Luna? We have Ravenclaws, Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs at this table, so you should at least know someone if you get sorted into one of those 3 houses. We also have friends in Slytherin too, so don't worry about that." "Oh, I'm not worried, Harry. I was just thinking it must be lovely to have so many friends." Hermione reached over Harry to take the little blonde's hand. "Luna, we want to be your friend too. Hogwarts can be quite daunting when you're new, but I want you to come to any of us if you need anything." Luna looked around the table, seeing nods of agreement from Susan, Hannah, Neville and the twins. Her face broke into a simply beautiful smile. "Yes, Harry, I'm really looking forward to Hogwarts." They headed into a crowded bookstore, noticing the person whose books made up this year's defense list was holding a book signing. Since they had no intention of purchasing those books, they didn't wait in that queue. Hermione was of course on Harry's arm, at least she was until someone shoved her out the way. "Bless my soul, the boy who lived. Smile, Harry, together we rate the front pane." Harry didn't know who this perfumed and perfectly coiffed Ponce was, but nobody treated Hermione like that. An arm had went around his shoulder and Harry decided it was time to put some of Remus's recent lessons into practice. He grabbed the pinky of this hand, twisting it sharply backward resulted in a girly squeal of pain from its owner. Freeing himself from the arm, Harry then swept the man's feet from under him, while still keeping a painful grip on that little finger. The wizard hit the floor with a thump and Colin still didn't get to see Harry's knife. The mere threat of having his pinky broken was enough to have Lockhart squealing like a banshee. "Nobody touches Hermione, apologize, before I really lose my temper." That girly voice was now shouting sorry over and over again. A blinding flash had Harry looking in Colin's direction, only to see innocence reflected back at him. The phantom photographer had now lost himself in the busy shop. Harry quickly went to check on his girlfriend, and then discovered this git had a hide on him that would put a Ukrainian iron belly to shame. "I would just like to thank Harry here for helping me with that little demonstration, and take this opportunity to announce he's going to be seeing a lot more of me. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I, Gilderoy Lockhart, Order of Merlin, 3rd class, honorary member of the Dark Force Defense League, and 5-time winner of Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile, have great pleasure and pride in announcing that this September I will be taking up the post of defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." Harry couldn't help but wonder at the gullibility of witches and wizards. He'd just kicked this nutter's ass, yet here were people who'd witnessed that applauding like loons at the announcement he would be teaching their children. Supposedly teaching the very thing he was obviously shit at, defense. Harry waited until the applause had died down before bursting this clown's bubble. "Excuse me, but you appear to have been misinformed. I have a private defense tutor, one I am very happy with. I will not be in your class." He took a quick look around and recognized some of the faces in the crowd. "Guys, anyone who had Cursebreaker Weasley for defense last year with me will have the same chance again come September. You also don't need to buy these books as we won't be using them. An autobiography as well as prescribing the defense texts for all 7 years. Someone must really need the money." Gilderoy was trying not to panic, and not doing a very good job of it. "Oh, come now, Harry, don't tease these good people. Surely you and these lovely young ladies would rather have me teach you defense." He was going for a reassuring smile, but it came over as lecherous leer, one that saw Neville's arm slip protectively around Padma. Parvati summed it up for all of them. "You're right, it really is no contest. We'll take Professor Weasley every time. He at least wears less makeup than me." This drew laughter from the Weasley contingent in the crowd, before Gilderoy found himself faced with a trio of very formidable witches. "Oh dear, Minerva. It would appear Albus has really scraped the bottom of the barrel this time." The head of the DMLE was studying Lockhart intensely, as if waiting on a suspect to crack and confess his crimes. Augusta agreed with her friend. "A defense professor who puts all 7 of his own books on the required list. For every year, mind, it's a disgrace. Is he going to be teaching the 1st and 7th years the same course?" Minerva also took Hogwarts' newest professor to task. Lockhart, I don't remember you being awarded a Defense or OWL, far less an Order of Merlin. Centurion Crow's award was front-page news. Yours seems to have slipped past unnoticed. Gilderoy missed McGonagall's implied insult, having just noticed the most gorgeous creature he had ever seen in his life. Who is that? That is Professor Hobson, our history teacher. Gilderoy was thinking there was more to this job than book sales when McGonagall went and spoilt it for him. She is here with her boyfriend, Lord Sirius Black. The name alone was enough to strike terror in Gilderoy. He would be giving that witch and her dark wizard of a boyfriend a wide berth. Harry was now enjoying the show, watching as the three witches tore this character to shreds. When he felt a tug on his sleeve, Colin had a question. He doesn't look a very good teacher, Harry. Can we get our lessons from Cursebreaker Weasley too? I'm sorry, Colin. He's a very busy man. He wouldn't have time to teach first year as well. Colin nodded in understanding but had another solution to the problem. Couldn't you teach us then as extra lessons? You beat him without even using magic. We would much rather learn from you. Luna looked at him pleadingly too. You said to ask if we needed anything? Hermione liked the idea. We could make it a club. It would need to be sponsored by a professor though. Henrika jumped in before Lockhart could offer. I got that covered, we just need to look at the new timetable and pick a suitable time. The Weasley twins then got in on the act. Hey, is this club just for firsties? We don't want to buy his books either. Gilderoy stood helpless as the entire event slipped away from him. This was already a publicity disaster, and then McGonagall really put the boot in. Last year, Professor Weasley held revision classes for our students sitting OPWLs and NIDTs, leading to Hogwarts' best defense results in many a year. I shall personally be contacting Ambassador Barchoke in the hope we can call on this special favor again, when the exams approach. The cheer this received from those Hogwarts students in the shop had Gilderoy wanting to cry. Just who was this Weasley person, and how could he possibly be more popular than him? Molly was standing there with an armload of books she now wasn't sure she wanted signed. Harry had easily defeated this famous wizard, giving rise to the first ray of doubt. The reaction of the students toward her son Bill was a heartwarming moment for the mother. She'd heard from Emma how highly regarded Bill was amongst the four he was training. Apparently that regard ran a lot deeper than just 4 students. Her son was going to be an assistant ambassador, one who worked with his father. Her 2 eldest sons had made career choices she hadn't agreed with at the time, but both were now proving successful in their own right. Molly was going to have a lot of time on her hands when all her children left for Hogwarts. She was planning on using some of that for quiet contemplation. The world they lived in was undoubtedly changing, and Molly had brought 7 children into the very same world. She was not going to be left behind like those Roman relics young Harry mentioned in his speech. Molly intended to talk to Bill about this. Ginny was ecstatic. Lessons from Harry and his friends was certainly something she would be putting her name against. She also hadn't missed Harry's reaction when that fool pushed Hermione out the way. He'd been calm and controlled at the ball, but hurting Hermione instantly put an end to that. Harry had their new defense professor on the floor in seconds, and it certainly wasn't planned, no matter what Lockhart said. Amelia stirred the pot some more by pulling Minerva aside for a whispered conversation. When you're speaking to Barchoke about Bill, ask him for a copy of a book that will be released in a week or so. Gilderoy Lockhart teaching defense might be the least of your worries at Hogwarts this year. After completing their shopping, plans were made to meet up on the platform before getting on the express. McGonagall would take both her charges home while Sirius and Henrika dropped theirs off at Gringotts. Neville and his Gran were with Harry and Hermione, both eager to see if there was any sign of improvement with either Longbottom currently undergoing treatment. The young couple left the Longbottoms. Their intended destination was much deeper into Gringotts. They heard their target long before setting eyes on him, the loud shouts and clangs of clashing metal reverberating through the tunnels. Harry led his girlfriend in, both standing respectfully against the wall and waiting to be called. He'd seen what could happen to those who interrupted a lesson. It was not something Harry wished to experience personally. Finally, the bellow came in their direction. So, Centurion Crow, what can I do for you? Harry and Hermione both came forward and knelt before the large goblin. Master Sharpshot, a gift from a very grateful student. Harry presented his mentor with a katana. The handle, guard and scabbard were all jet black, but the blade was polished to a silver mirror finish. This is exquisite craftsmanship, Centurion. Where did you get this? Gringotts, in Tokyo. They tried to palm me off with the usual junk they sell to tourists. That was until I told them it was for my sensei, Master Sharpshot. Mentioning your name had a profound effect. They all wanted to be the maker who supplied Master Sharpshot with a katana. Even after leaving, he's still sucking up. Teacher's little pup. The insult was said loud enough for Harry to hear, and sarcastically enough to more than imply an insult. Harry had cursed his luck when he first spotted just who was in this class. He had no intention, though, of just kneeling there and swallowing this insult. Why dragon breath? I didn't know you missed me. Speaking of pups, I see you still have the manners of a dog, poking that wet nose in where it's not wanted and whining like a bitch. I'm also amazed you can hear what we're saying when you're all the way over there, especially with those tiny ears of yours. Dragontooth's insults had the class sniggering. Harry's reply had them laughing out loud. Insulting a goblin's name, ear size and nose in one go was impressive. The goblin those insults were aimed at didn't think so. You and your ugly human bitch strut around Gringotts wearing our sacred blades. You are nothing more than a festering boil on our proud nation, a boil that needs to be lanced before it poisons all of us. Harry now stood and faced his antagonist. Everyone here knows you possess neither the skill nor courage to do that lancing dragon breath. We can settle this right now, and I'll even allow you to choose 2 friends to help. That is, if you have 2 friends. The glint of triumph in the goblin's eyes alerted Harry he'd been duped. He was just about to find out how badly he'd been trapped. And I will allow your human bitch to fight by your side. Let's see if she can even hold a blade. At that, Hermione was by Harry's side, surprising everyone in the class by answering in their own tongue. I accept. Fighting a female would appear to be about your limit. Harry then pulled her to the side for a quick word while the class prepared for the fight. Hermione, this isn't wooden swords we'll be fighting with. The duel doesn't finish until someone is bleeding. I know, Harry. I also know he baited you into this. I wasn't having you losing face over me. It would probably be a deadly insult to both parties, but he reminded me so much of Draco Malfoy. His uncle was one of those my father fought in the pit. To say there is bad blood between us would be a massive understatement. They'll be cocky and showing off to their friends. Stick to defense and I will take them out as quickly as I possibly can. Your dad's gonna kill me for getting you into this, and then your mum will dance on my dead body. Hermione gave him a kiss for luck before enlarging and fitting her shield on her left arm. She could feel her bracelet expanding up the same arm, obviously recognizing the danger she was in. Harry had been teaching her for a year, but these goblins would have a lot more training and experience than that. This would also give her an indicator of just where she was with the blade. Hermione could only hope it wouldn't be too painful a lesson. Like Hermione's top, Harry's t-shirt was loose enough to cope with his armor under it. Using his armor wasn't really fair to his opponents, but Harry didn't give a shit. Hermione was in this fight. He intended to make it as short as possible. He knew the class would expect him to use his armor. No goblin would ever surrender an advantage they had in a fight. Master Sharpshot found himself thrust into the role of referee. He called the 5 combatants forward. There were no flowery speeches. He just told it like it was. First blood, fight. The trio of goblins' intentions became apparent at once. All 3 rushed at Hermione. Harry managed to intercept 2 of them, but Dragoontooth got through. Thankfully, he was showboating for the audience, giving Hermione time to block with her shield. This form of attack also left the goblin wide open to the counter. Hermione took her gifted opportunity. With a triumphant cry, her thrust caught Dragoontooth off guard and her blade nicked his shoulder, clearly drawing blood. She glanced round to see Harry had already dealt with one and just about to dispatch the other. That was her mistake. With her guard now down, Dragoontooth lashed out at Hermione. his blade slicing diagonally across her torso between shoulder and hip before Harry hit him like a golden version of the Hogwarts Express, weapons forgotten. Harry was pummeling the shrieking goblin with his fists until the massive form of Master Sharpshot pulled him off. Harry then remembered what happened and turned to see Hermione trying to piece her clothing back together with her wand, her repaired clothing once more covering the golden webbing that had prevented her being seriously injured. A bloody dragon tooth couldn't believe he hadn't even damaged the human bitch. She's wearing Centurion armor. That's an instant death sentence. Harry's only thought was to protect Hermione. For this to work, he needed to change her status. Everyone clearly saw my family design on that armor. It's not Centurion. Hermione is my mate, and therefore part of my family. The entire class, including the instructor, were now gaping at this revelation from Harry. It was time for some proof. He retrieved his sword from where he had dropped it and sliced open his palm. Realizing what Harry was doing, Hermione didn't hesitate for a second. She used her own blade to mirror Harry's actions. Their bloody hands were then joined, clasped palm to palm, as Harry said the words, "You are mine, and I am yours." Hermione's eyes were sparkling with tears. Tears that the pain in her hand played no part in, as she gave the required response. "You are mine, and I am yours." A silver glow started at their hands and spread up their arms. It had turned golden by the time both were enveloped by it, clearly showing that magic had accepted their vows. The young couple leaned forward to kiss each other, neither noticing their hands were completely healed. With his arm around Hermione's waist, Harry once more turned his attention back to Dragon Tooth. Today was nothing more than a thinly disguised assassination attempt on my mate. Even when she beat you in the fight, you proceeded with your plan. You will answer to me for that, in the pit. Harry and Hermione then bowed to Master Sharpshot before leaving the class, a class that had just descended into utter chaos. Hermione waited until they were out of earshot before speaking to Harry. "What just happened in there? In the eyes of the nation, we are now mates. That bastard will face me in the pit for his attack on you. That entire family has no honor. The only question now is who will kill me first, my father or yours?" Hermione, though, was concentrating on something else. "Why does this pit sound so ominous?" They were heading straight for Barchoke's office when Harry supplied the answer she dreaded hearing. "When two goblins enter the pit, only one comes out alive." Hermione's legs may have kept going, but her mind had shut down at that part. This had to be done publicly, it had to be seen to be scrupulously fair, and it had to be done today. Ragnarok had already heard from Barchoke that Harry wasn't backing down an inch, with Sharpshot confirming that Dragontooth had struck after being defeated in the duel. The blow was also of such a nature and ferocity that Harry's claims of an assassination attempt could neither be ignored or dismissed as fanciful. Word of this incident had spread like wildfire through the nation, and the benches around the court were already almost full. Both families were now in front of him, Miss Granger at her mate's side. "Time to get these proceedings started. Centurion Crow, you have made some very serious charges, and invoked trial by combat. Do you wish to change your mind?" "No, Director. I wish to proceed as our law dictates." Having expected no other answer, Barchoke addressed the court. Master Sharpshot was present during the entire event. I trust there are none here who would question the validity of his memories. No one wanted to make that challenge, so they settled down to watch Sharpshot's memory of the incident broadcast. Some laughter at the initial insults soon died down as everyone concentrated on the fight itself. All goblins had at least some training in weapons. This knowledgeable audience clearly saw the overconfident boy showing off to his class, only to get nicked on the shoulder by his less skillful but more focused opponent. His actions then set off roars of protest at a cowardly attack, an attack that could really have only one design, to cause major damage to this female. There was total silence as they witnessed two magical humans both become bonded as mates by the most goblin of ceremonies. How was my son supposed to know they were mates? "I think it's disgusting humans allow this so young." He was cut off by Barchoke, in no mood to make any concessions whatsoever. My son and his mate's honor was clearly displayed throughout this incident, for all to see, as was your offspring's cowardice and treachery. Like us, the humans consider these two far too young to officially become mates. They have already made their choice known, though, a choice we just witnessed being accepted by magic. Both certainly intend to wait until they are the appropriate age before taking the next step. This issue aside, Miss Granger was also very clearly under the protection of my house. If the councillor wishes to refute this protection, my family stands ready to instigate a blood feud. With that, the lines in the sand were now very clearly drawn. Dragontooth's father was raging at his son for being so blatant and getting caught. That didn't mean he was going to stand back and let him be slaughtered in the pit. Even from watching Sharpshoot's memory, the result of any such contest couldn't be in any doubt. Were Dragoontooth to face Crow, it would be like sending a lamb to slaughter. My son is not of age. I claim the right to nominate a champion on his behalf. Harry then spoke up. Your son is over a year older than me, but I'm still prepared to step into the pit. That's your father's decision to make. I will work within the law to protect my son. Since my mate has already defeated your son, I understand this cowardice. Know this, though. I will fight your nominated champion. After I defeat him, I swear I will cut your son's ears off if he ever comes anywhere near my mate again. Spurred on by the gasps that this most severe of threats had drawn from the crowd, Dragoontooth's father turned on Barchoke. Are you going to stand there and let this boy issue threats, and even consider letting him enter the pit of justice? My son is a centurion who has also been awarded the highest honor the Ministry of Magic has to offer. He doesn't need to hide behind his father. As to making threats, let me reiterate my son's words. I will not stand idly by and watch these two young people be sniped at by those who think they are better. His mate already has friend of our nation status and can clearly be seen to be learning our ways. My son has publicly sworn on his blood to defend the nation, and will today fight in the pit of justice on a matter of goblin honor. What more would you want of them? Ragnarok really had no option. He may be the director, but the law had to be obeyed. I find the claim against Dragoontooth to be proven, and therefore I have no reason to block this honor duel. I find Dragoontooth's cowardly attack to be particularly disgusting, but again I'm powerless to intervene and grant him the champion his father has requested. Now let's get this over with. Hermione found. They were quickly joined by Master Sharpshoot. Bear up, lass. They will be watching your behavior almost as closely as that of your mate. Crow, only I know what you are really capable of. Now is the time to display it for all to see. Not only must you win, you must do it in a manner that ensures you and your mate can safely walk around Gringotts. Scrape a victory and you might as well declare yourself a wizard now, because they would be queuing up to get you in the pit, and they all now know just how to achieve that. A threat to your mate has you rushing headlong to defend her. This fight is not just for your safety. Hermione's life is threatened here too. Harry nodded, his face a mask of concentration. He bowed to Master Sharpshoot, kissed a trembling Hermione before bowing to his father. It was time. Hermione knew Barchoke and Master Sharpshoot were offering words of comfort as she sat wedged between the two. She didn't hear any of it. Her entire being was focused on Harry and the large goblin that waited on him in the appropriately named pit. The enclosure had a sandy base, better for absorbing spilt blood, about 60 feet in diameter and with walls at least 4 feet deep. While the entire arena was lit entirely by flaming torches, Harry's golden armor made him easily visible, though the massive battle-axe the goblin held certainly grabbed Hermione's attention too. They stood about 20 feet apart, bowing to each other before Ragnarok set the proceedings underway. To the death fight. Apparently normal behavior for these fights predetermined that the two combatants would circle each other, probing to assess their opponent's strengths and weaknesses before making a move. The big goblin had other ideas. He thought he was facing a human child and wanted this over with quickly, unknowingly playing straight into his opponent's greatest strength. Dragoontooth's champion was merely hired muscle, not too smart, and the large bag of gold offered had instantly destroyed any reservations the greedy goblin might have had about his opponent. He also wasn't too bothered about the centurion armor his opponent possessed. positive his battle axe would penetrate it. With a roar, the goblin charged as he swung that great axe in what would be a killing blow, should it connect. In a move that Hermione had seen Harry use on Master Sharpsword, the sword of Gryffindor sliced right through the shaft of the goblin's axe. Harry was moving quicker than seemed possible. Having sliced through the shaft, Harry continued his move and pirouetted on his planted foot, bringing his sword back around so the goblin's own charge saw him skewer himself on the ancient goblin blade. The point of Harry's sword entered the charging goblin's throat and exited the back of his neck, severing his spine on the way out. With his spinal cord severed, the goblin's body hit the sand like a sack of shit, with Harry's sword still embedded in situ. With the life visibly leaving his opponent's eyes, Harry retrieved the damaged axe and knelt beside his dying opponent, laying the weapon gently on the goblin's chest. "You faced me and fought with honor, unlike those you championed." When the goblin was finally dead, Harry removed his sword from the body and left the pit with his head held high to utter silence. Hermione wanted to race straight to him. She'd never seen Harry more in need of someone to hold on to. She really needed one of Harry's hugs herself. There was probably only her and his father who could see how much this was costing Harry. Watching as Harry fought a duel to the death was certainly no picnic for them either. Barchoke held her arm and Hermione was thankful for the support. She didn't think she could have moved otherwise. Harry took Hermione's other arm as the three of them left the still silent chamber. It was Ragnarok who finally broke the silence after the party had left. "I know there were those amongst you who silently questioned my sanity when I made Crow a centurion. I hope he has answered those doubters for both of us today. Master Sharpsword's opinion is that Crow will someday become one of our greatest ever warriors, and he fought today purely as a goblin. By using the magic he possesses, Crow could have ended this contest before his opponent even got near enough to use his axe." This was more than enough to convince those watching that Centurion Crow was someone you wanted on your side, never facing you from the other side of the pit. The rumors that he had defeated Master Sharpsword were now being believed. How do you fight someone that moves twice as quick as you do, and still has magic to call on if he needs it? Harry and Hermione managed to hold themselves together while Barchoke led them back to their dwelling. The door was barely closed before both of them collapsed, sobbing into each other's arms. As Barchoke watched his son and new daughter come apart at the horror they'd just witnessed, the goblin took a leaf from Emma's book. Laying the couple down in the seating area, he gently tucked a blanket around them both. He would need to leave them like that for a few moments. Harry and Hermione needed the Grangers here as quickly as possible. Emma's gentle touch and soothing words were required while he would then attempt to explain to Dan exactly what had happened here today. The front-page picture of Harry standing over a clearly terrified Gilderoy Lockhart was not how Albus had hoped his new defense professor would announce himself to the country. It had all been so carefully set up too: book signing, large crowd and guaranteed media coverage. How could that go so disastrously wrong? It was only when he opened the paper and his old eyes caught the vivid advert for a soon-to-be-published book that he sensed the real danger. The title alone had his stomach in a knot. He could see The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore becoming an instant bestseller. When the phrase "will reveal all" jumped out at him, Albus felt his bowels loosening. Both fathers glanced up as Emma re-entered the room. "They're sleeping now, but only fitfully." "What the hell happened today? I thought it would be better if I showed you." Sharpsword knew I'd want the memory, even after how things turned out. "I'll be translating, so please save any questions until the memory is finished. We'll be here all night if necessary, but I promise I'll answer every one of them." They watched Harry and Hermione's visit to Master Sharpsword, with Barchoke filling in the background when he wasn't directly translating. Emma had to stuff her fist in her mouth to halt a scream that would have woken the sleeping couple after Dragontooth sliced at Hermione when she wasn't looking. Both were enthralled at the glow that covered the couple, and neither argued with Harry's assessment that this was nothing more than a grasped opportunity to seriously harm their daughter. After the memory finished playing, Dan took a moment before saying anything. There were things happening here beyond his comprehension, and he didn't want to begin shouting. He had the feeling that once he started shouting, he wouldn't be able to stop. After watching their daughter almost get disemboweled with a sword, Dan felt he was entitled to do a bit of shouting. Barchoke, I thank you, Harry, and every deity I can think of, for that bracelet on my daughter's wrist. Please understand, though, a very big part of me is currently wishing I'd kicked McGonagall's ass right out our door when she pulled that "your daughter's a witch" shit. Hermione seems to be lurching from one life-threatening incident to another. I don't know how much more of this I can take. Emma shifted so she could put her arm around her husband, seeking and gaining comfort. She had a question she wanted answered before her husband exploded. What was the cut hands and that golden glow all about? In the eyes of some goblins, Hermione is thought of as a lesser being, much like some of the more radical purebloods try to look down on her. Sadly, the nation is not without its bigotry too. Harry claiming they were mates instantly changed her status. Their public display of bonding will stop any and all harassment. This was greeted with silence, so Barchoke continued talking. When my mate and I bonded, we glowed right up our arms and into our torsos, and that was considered a very strong bonding. What those two did today, well, I've never seen anything like it. Dan's voice was very quiet as he asked a question that had no place in any sane conversation about two 12-year-olds. Are you trying to tell me they're married? Inside the nation, they will be considered mates. Outside of that, no, though you might find the occasional elf referring to Hermione as Lady Potter. This was the final straw. The straw that broke Dan. Emma, go get Hermione, we're going home. Dan, calm down a moment and think. How would we even get home? Calm was something Dan wasn't capable of at the moment. We'll fucking walk if we need to. Anything to get our baby away from here. Barchoke held his hands up in an attempt to stop Dan's imminent eruption. There will be no need for anyone to walk. I need to show you something else first. Then if you still want to go, I'll take you home. What you just watched was unfortunately only Act 1. It was the second act that has our children really upset. You need to see this so you both know what you're dealing with. He then played his own memory of what happened next to stunned silence from the Grangers. Barchoke was attempting to accentuate the positive from this. As Harry's mate, Hermione can now walk around Gringotts with impunity. No one will want to challenge Harry now. Dan wasn't buying into that. He was looking at the situation from a whole different perspective. You made my little girl sit and watch that. Emma, get Hermione. We're going home right now. Dan, wait, let's discuss this. Emma could only watch helplessly as her husband stormed right past her. He returned dragging a sleepy and shocked Hermione with him, a Hermione who, now seeing her father's intentions, began fighting with him every step of the way and screaming for Harry. The boy who had been so decisive in battle earlier stood holding onto the door jamb, totally lost at what to do next. Barchoke, we're ready to go home. Hermione's cries of anguish were being totally ignored by her father. Harry, I'll be right back, son. Hermione's father has decided she's going home for the evening. Somehow, I don't think you're invited. Barchoke took Emma's hand before grabbing Dan firmly by the arm and walking the Granger family home. Emma finally entered the lounge. She sat on a chair well away from her husband, not even looking in his direction, far less speaking to him. Is she asleep? After crying for over 3 hours, she's exhausted. I don't know if I would class that as sleep. She'll understand. How can she understand? I don't understand. She watched Harry kill that goblin today. Daniel Granger, you have become the thing I hate most, a fucking hypocrite. You tell your daughter to talk things out, and then, when you really need to sit and talk things out, you go all Captain Caveman and drag Hermione out of there. Those two have had a pretty traumatic day. You increased that trauma tenfold by your actions. I will not have my daughter married before her 13th birthday. Ugh, so now we come to the real reason. Did you honestly think those two were treating this as their wedding night? Emma was shaking her head, trying to rationalize what happened tonight. We've both seen what that boy can do. He could have stopped you tonight with one hand tied behind his back. The only reason he didn't was out of respect. A respect you lost tonight. Did you notice you were suddenly relegated to Hermione's father by Barchoke? You lost both their respect, along with Hermione's, and mine too. Hermione will come around when we enroll her in a new school, one that doesn't have trolls. You can't do that, your daughter is a witch and we signed that right over to Barchoke. Good luck with getting him to rescind it, especially since neither Hermione or I will agree with you on that point. You will also have to arrange cover for my patients. I'll be staying home with Hermione until it's time for her to return to Hogwarts. Emma noticed their holiday photographs still sitting in packets. They had planned on placing the best ones in an album of their summer holidays. She grabbed them and threw the lot at her husband. The packets opens in flight, scattering pictures all around him. There is the girl you profess to love. You'll notice she's smiling in every single one of those pictures. I suggest you put them in frames. It's probably the last time you'll see her smile. She asked me why her dad would rip her heart out. I had no answer to give her. You needn't bother figuring one out. Tell her later Hermione has no intention of speaking to you ever again. She got up to leave but had a parting comment for her husband. If you had just hurt Hermione, you might be able to ride this one out. She was looking into Harry's eyes as you dragged her out of there. She'll never forgive you for the pain you caused him tonight. I'll be sleeping in Hermione's room. Try not to waken us when you leave in the morning. Dan was left sitting there, surrounded by memories of a wonderful summer, a summer that just turned to shit. He really wanted a stiff drink but had patients tomorrow. A good few of Emma's patients would end up in his chair too. He hoped things looked better in the cold light of day. They appeared pretty fucked up at 2 a.m. Albus hated getting old. His knees were bloody killing him. He'd been kneeling in the fireplace all morning, with no results to show for all the pain. All he could discover was a company called Alethea Printing would be distributing these cursed books to the shops and handling the mail orders through Gringotts. The adverts in the profit were vague enough to generate interest, yet not give Albus clues about what to expect. They were also handled through Gringotts. Someone was being very clever here, knowing Albus had no contacts with the goblins. He hoped they weren't being too clever since Alethea meant truth, something he was especially averse to. 5 incredibly long days, 5 of the worst days of his life. It wasn't the coming home to no dinner being made for him. He got that message loud and clear when there was no coffee or breakfast ready in the morning. It wasn't even having to iron his own shirts or sleeping alone. That his daughter would leave any time he entered a room really hurt, but that still wasn't the worst. It was the silence that was slowly killing Dan. His wife did speak, but about nothing of consequence. Hermione hadn't uttered a word in his presence since that night. The Grangers had always been a family that talked, and he was the one to shatter that trait into tiny pieces. Hermione had thrown herself into more intensive training. Dan suspected it was just to keep out of his way. She would be out running when he got up for work and then again when he came home. If tonight followed its usual pattern, she would come in from her run and then practice in the garden with a wooden sword, her real one being left behind in Gringotts. She entered the house, grabbed a bottle of water and headed straight for the garden, all the while ignoring her father's very existence. He watched through the window as she practiced against imaginary foes. Dan wondered how many of them would wear his face. It was long past time to take some action, so he headed out there. Hermione, you can't ignore me forever. Hermione seemed to be making a right good attempt at that very feat, causing Dan to lose his temper. Hermione, I am your father and you will stop this nonsense. He reached for her shoulder, only to find his hand batted away with her practiced sword as Hermione spun to face him. Don't touch me. Why you? As Dan once more reached for his daughter, he found Hermione's wooden sword was far quicker than he was. I said, don't touch me. Each word was emphasized by a blow or a poke with the pole. Hermione, though, began to lose her own temper, and didn't stop there. Tell me why. Why? At this point, Emma arrived and grabbed a now crying Hermione, gently leading her back inside the house. Dan was stunned at his daughter's actions, but what hurt far more than any blows was the look of loathing in her eyes as she was doing it. He was sitting under the tree when Emma returned. I've really fucked up big time, haven't I? His wife didn't think he was looking for an answer to that question. Instead, she told him something she'd learned from Hermione. Between the incidents that day, Barchoke had a little time with them. He sat Hermione down and said, While the conditions weren't exactly ideal, he was delighted to welcome her to the family. Goblin custom decreed that she was now considered his daughter too, something he was going to do his very best to be worthy of. Compare those actions to yours and then answer your own question. Emma then made her own position on this matter crystal clear. I carried that girl for 9 months, Dan, nearly died giving birth to her. You may be prepared to allow your pig-headedness to ruin your relationship with our daughter. I am not. You may have valid reasons for what you did, but there can be no excuse for the way you carried it out. One way or another, our entire future is tied to these people. You dragged Hermione out of there as if Harry had some fatally contagious disease. A disease you desperately didn't want your daughter to catch. I don't know how or even if you can come back from that. Emma walked back into the house, leaving Dan wishing the ground would open up and swallow him. Albus was sitting at breakfast but not eating. Today was his favorite day of the entire year, the day the witches and wizards of tomorrow came back into his sphere of influence. Last year's 1st of September was marred by a certain goblin-raised boy attending Hogwarts that could pale into insignificance compared to this blasted book. Today's headline in the Prophet was all about the new Goblin Treaty being signed yesterday. He dreaded to think what tomorrow's front page would be. There was also the question of how to get his hands on a copy. He could hardly walk into Flourish and Blots and buy one. Having the book owl delivered was also fraught with danger. He was certain the media would pick up on this. As to getting someone to buy it for him, there was really only Hagrid he could trust to carry that out. If he asked Hagrid, Albus might as well place his own advert in the Prophet saying he'd read the book. There was also the deniability aspect to consider. Since I wouldn't read such a thing, I can't really comment on it was an attractive option. Knowledge, though, was like the most addictive of drugs to Albus. Just something that he had to have. His problem was actually solved from the most unlikely of sources. Minerva dropped a plain covered book beside his untouched plate. A friend arranged a pre-release copy for me. Do Hogwarts a favor, leave before you drag us down with you. No more words were exchanged or needed. The book found its way into Albus's pocket as he headed for his office, leaving his breakfast still untouched. He needed to do some serious reading before the express arrived. There was excitement in the Granger household today, something that had been sadly missing in the 10 or so days following the happenings in Gringotts. Emma entered her daughter's room to see a hyper Hermione with a big smile on her face. "And I thought you were excited about going to Hogwarts last year?" Both smiled at that, and recognized Hermione was a totally different girl from the one that boarded the train last September. Their problem stemmed from one member of the family not realizing just how much she had changed. "Hermione, your dad wants to go with us to the station." "No!" "Hermione, I think he now realizes what he's done." "He has no idea what he's done, nor does he care. Harry had just killed someone to keep me safe. You can't understand what that did to him. We were both in a bad place, but coping as long as we were together we could handle it. He took that away from us." Emma could see the determination in her daughter's eyes. It was as she'd feared. Anyone hurting Hermione drew a predictable response from Harry. Their daughter, though, was every bit as protective of her mate. She'd had long conversations with her daughter about what this meant and had been greatly relieved to learn the answer. In the short term, not very much. They had no intention of letting any outside factors sway the pace at which their relationship developed. Emma was further relieved to hear her daughter say that she would probably have to be the one to instigate any further steps. Harry was far too much of a gentleman to ever be presumptuous. Hermione wasn't finished with her rant, though was trying her best not to let anger get the better of her. "Every letter I send, I'm continually having to reassure Harry I don't think any less of him, something a hug would do, instantly. He took that away from us too. Harry has had to live all his life knowing his only living relatives didn't want him. He now has another name to add to that list. A man he actually respected. Until I can make sure Harry's okay, and that we're still good, there will be no sympathy coming from me." Emma could clearly see what was really behind Hermione's belligerent attitude. Her father had very deliberately attempted to drive a wedge between her and Harry. There would be no steps toward forgiveness possible until their daughter could confirm his attempt had failed. Hermione wouldn't be able to do that to her satisfaction until she actually got to talk with Harry. and of course hug the boy to within an inch of his life. Your dad is still insisting on going to the station with us. You may be able to use magic that stops him coming into your room. I don't think you'll be able to do that for King's Cross Station. Unless you have another method of getting to the platform, I don't see you avoiding this. Hermione's smile was almost predatory. Betsy. A small pop announced the arrival of an obviously female elf. Yes, mistress. How can Betsy help? She knelt to be at eye level with the eager little servant. Betsy, would it be possible for me and my mother to be taken to platform 9 3/4? Oh, easy, mistress. Just call for Betsy when you are ready to leave. With another pop, she was gone, leaving Hermione to speak with her surprised mother. Since Harry and I performed the goblin ceremony of mates, the Potter elves call me mistress. Betsy is my personal elf. She was originally terrified of me, thinking I wanted to set her free. Seeing the hurt I was causing her forced me to change my mind about elves. Harry was right, it's just a matter of perspective. Betsy is part of our family and I will treat her as such. She's happiest when busy taking care of me, and sometimes I'm even deliberately messy now. I will be making my own way to the express. You're welcome to come with me, he is not. Emma left, knowing this news would go down, as well as telling a patient they needed root canal treatment. It would be painful and costly, but Dan really had only himself to blame. Harry was beginning to lose it. Sirius, if this is your idea of a prank, I'm really not in the mood. A bemused godfather stuck his head in the door. What's up, pup? Marauder's honor. I wouldn't dream of pulling a prank on you today. My stuff keeps shifting around the room when my back is turned. I'm trying to get ready, but it's almost like something doesn't want me to go. Realization hit Harry at that point, or someone. Potter elves to me. Multiple pops saw Harry's bedroom at Grimmauld. Soon fill with elves. I think we have an intruder. I don't want him harmed, just caught and brought to me. It was only seconds later that 3 elves returned. The trio also had a hold of a struggling Dobby. Stand still, Dobby. No one here wants to hurt you, but this has to stop. Harry Potter must not return to Hogwarts. Terrible things will happen there. Terrible things. Hermione will be on that train, and terrible things will happen to anyone trying to stop me joining her, understand? Dobby was about to say that he received threats like this on a daily basis. That was until he looked into those green eyes. Dobby now knew he'd never been threatened like this before. Terrible things would indeed befall anyone trying to keep Harry Potter from his mate. He nodded his understanding. I understand you're trying to help, Dobby. I really do. This is not the way, though. If you can give me any clues or specific warnings, I would really appreciate it. If not, just stay out my way. Let him go, guys. No sooner had Dobby been released than he was off, something Harry would soon need to do too. Harry was heading for the barrier when probably the last person in the world he wanted to see stepped out in front of him. Harry, can I have a quick word? Not at the moment, Mr. Granger. I'm in a hurry. Tim was ready to insist when a primeval part of his brain screamed not to be so bloody stupid. The same part of the brain that kept our ancestors alive in the days when man was not the top predator in the land. One look at Harry was enough to confirm this would not just be a bad mistake, it might be the last mistake he ever made. Very well, Harry, have a good year. A quick one-armed hug from Sirius, and he melted through the brickwork, leaving Dan with an irate godfather on his hands. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and assume you were about to apologize to my godson. Otherwise, you and I have nothing further to say to one another. I was hoping to, yes. At least Harry was civil. Hermione refuses to even speak to me. She's done some kind of magic that won't even allow me into her room. This left Sirius shaking his head. She controls the wards on your home. They need to be tied to someone magical. She could probably stop you entering your own house. You have no idea the trouble you've caused, or just how much shit you could be in. We need to go somewhere and talk. We need to wait for Emma first. I'm giving her a lift home. Hermione arranged transport onto the platform for both of them. I drove here on my own. I've been on my own a lot lately. Hermione was early, that was to be expected. Harry running late was not. Her anxiety levels climbed every time the hand on the platform clock moved a minute closer to 11. She was surrounded by their friends, all of whom were somewhat aware of what was going on. Hermione had told them her father had gotten very angry about something and dragged her away from Harry. That she hadn't seen him since their day in Diagon Alley more than accounted for the anxiety she was displaying. The group should actually have gotten on the train as they were causing a bit of an obstruction. Hermione didn't care. She wasn't moving from that spot until Harry arrived. As the tallest amongst them, it was Neville who spotted him first. "He's here." Hermione took off in the direction Neville had indicated, only stopping when she crashed into her boyfriend. Arms wrapped around each other, they discovered that kissing and talking at the same time was something they would need to practice. Just having her back in his arms made everything in Harry's world okay. He just needed one final piece of reassurance. He whispered in Hermione's ear, "Are we good?" "No, Harry, we're bloody great." Their needy hug was broken by a familiar voice. "You two need to get on the train. You have a long trip to get reacquainted." "Hello, Mrs. Granger?" She remembered what Hermione said and let her actions speak for her. She pulled Harry into a hug. "It's Emma, Harry, just Emma. Perhaps, in a few years we may give something else a try. I don't think either of us is quite ready for that yet." Harry, though he couldn't be any happier, only to be proved wrong. Emma kissed them both, before shooing them in the direction of their waiting friends. More hugs of greeting was followed by a quick hello to Colin's parents, and a promise to keep an eye on him. Luna was coming with the Weasleys, who were apparently notorious for running late. They needed 2 compartments, counting Luna, and possibly Ginny too. Just as the train was getting ready to leave, the redheads arrived. Sensing that the 4 had things to talk about, Susan offered that they would go and find Luna. Now that the train was pulling away, Harry appreciated that, but had another task they could help with at the same time. He opened his trunk and started piling up books on the floor. "Transfiguration, I thought you said there wasn't any books on goblin transfiguration." "There aren't, Susan, and neither are these. I just didn't want them getting confiscated." A book that might be confiscated was certainly one Parvati had an interest in. One look inside the cover had the witch doing her happy dance. Here was enough gossip material to last until Christmas. "Oh, Harry, can I get a copy for Lavender?" "Well, since I want this spread all over the castle, I can't think of 2 better witches for the job." The smile Harry wore robbed the words of any intentional hurt. A hug from Parvati saw her shoot out of there with her pockets full of Dumbledore's expos. Susan and Hannah also took more than a few copies, promising to make sure at least a couple ended up in the hands of Slytherins. When it was just the 4 of them, it was Padma who then broached the elephant in the room. "What the hell happened that would make Dan go off like that? Did he catch you 2 in bed together or something?" Padma had tried to inject some levity into the situation. She wasn't prepared for Hermione's answer. With Harry back at her side, Hermione found she could actually crack a joke about something that yesterday was too painful to even mention. "Something like that, he actually dragged me right out of Harry's bed." Seeing their 2 best friends with their chins on the floor gave Hermione her first laugh in over a week. It was time to tell their story. Sirius waited until their order was delivered to the booth before erecting a privacy charm. "I need you both to sit, drink your coffee and listen. Halloween 1981, I made the wrong decision, and it harmed my godson. I spent 10 years in Azkaban because of that mistake, yet Barchoke barely forgave me. I only got back into my godson's life because Harry wanted it, and his father thought his son needed me. I know I won't get another chance and will do my damnedest to ensure I don't screw up again." He needed a sip of his own tea before continuing. "When I saw that memory of their bonding, I'm not ashamed to say I cried. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, and I have Henrika Hobson for a girlfriend. I don't know Hermione nearly as well as I'd like to, but a blind man could see she loves my godson almost as much as Harry loves her. The last week or so has been hell. Watching as that young man questioned everything in his life was not a pleasant experience." Emma had tears in her eyes as she answered Sirius. "Hermione has been the same. The only time I've seen her happy was when she finally met Harry at the station. How can we fix this, Sirius?" "I am not the problem, Emma. You have a very angry goblin and his bewildered son to deal with. Harry now thinks Dan hates him and will try to take Hermione away, not something I would advise. What makes you say that, Sirius? You could lose her, Emma, and I'm being deadly serious here. Hermione belongs in our world now, a world where you have practically no opinion, never mind rights. Deliberately keeping Hermione from her bonded mate could see you lose custody of your daughter, especially if that mate is my godson. He has an in with the ministry that would see such a request almost instantly granted. You've seen enough of how our system works to know this is true. Harry has killed to protect Hermione. He'll do whatever is necessary where she is concerned. Shit. If Harry declared himself Lord Potter, Fudge would change the law to let them marry the following day. Emma was in bits at this news. Dan was in tears too. What can I do? I'll do anything, Sirius. I'm desperate here. First thing, stay away from Barchoke. You not only ripped the guts out of his son, you also hurt the girl he now legally calls his daughter. Hurting a goblin's children. Well, not a smart move. You saw the memory of Harry in the pit. Barchoke has entered it twice to protect his son. Don't let the suit fool you. Emma now had her husband by the lapels of his jacket, pulling him toward her. Daniel Granger, you will fix this. I don't care if you have to crawl to Hogwarts on your hands and knees. You will bloody fix what you broke. I will not lose her. I can't lose her. She then lost it and buried her head into Dan's chest. It didn't mask her sobs as Emma's heart broke. The tears were really flowing now from Dan too. Sirius had to cast a mild confundus charm as they were starting to attract attention, even with the silencing charm up. The key to this is Harry, and the way to Harry is through Hermione. I'll be seeing them both this weekend, and I'll happily carry any letters you want. But that's it. I think what you did was abysmal, and don't really know where that came from. That should have been one of the happiest days of their lives. It was never going to be because Harry had to step in the pit. You have to understand Harry now thinks he's a murderer and no longer good enough for Hermione. You did that, and I think I have a right to know why. Dan did his best to explain the emotional turmoil that night produced. I was still trying to come to terms with not losing Hermione to that attack, only to discover I was going to lose my little girl anyway. Harry is handsome, incredibly rich, so very well-mannered and on first-name terms with government leaders. My daughter is also head over heels in love with him, and now they're practically married. I just couldn't cope with any more and panicked. I had to get my family away. Dan looked down at his hands and saw they were shaking. I'm a dentist, Sirius. I spend my days looking into people's mouths. I thought my hobby of shooting was a walk on the wild side, add a bit of danger to my life, but paper targets don't fire back. I've never even shot at a rabbit. Yet Harry can't go to a ball without someone having a go at him. I keep telling myself I'm okay with this, but obviously I'm not. Hermione attended that same ball with a sword at her hip, her wand in a holster on her arm and 2 shields, as part of her belt. As her father, I should be the one protecting the children. She beat me up with a wooden sword, holding back too, I'll bet. I was a drowning man, Sirius, jumping into the life raft of the life we had before, only to discover that life doesn't exist anymore. The last 10 days have been a constant nightmare for all of us, and I don't know what to do about it. A still tearful Emma tried to help her husband. How do you feel about Harry? Shit, that could have us here all day. On the one hand, he's this kind, gentle, fun-loving soul with eyes that captured both of my girls the moment they met him. He's so bloody honorable that he would put knights of yore to shame. Watching the two of them dance together never fails to make me smile at how well they fit together and how happy he makes my daughter. Then he detects a threat to Hermione and Centurion Crow turns up, kicking ass and taking no shit from anyone. Dan was shaking his head at the inconsistencies he'd just described, but the dentist wasn't finished yet. There is also the boy that has been at my daughter's side for a year now. He makes her happy just being in the same room and would face down the devil himself to protect her. Honestly, if I could design the perfect boy for my daughter, it would be Harry with a haircut. Ponytails are just so 60s. Dan had even more tears running down his cheeks by the time he'd finished, and in danger of succumbing to an emotional meltdown. He was saved from that fate by a kiss on the cheek from his wife. You write all that down and send it to Hermione. You know she'll let Harry read it anyway. I would leave out the bit about the hair though. Hermione and I both love it. Dan was trying to wipe the tears away with his sleeve. I know, but I don't want her thinking he's perfect. Can't have them getting big-headed now, can we? It was a weak attempt at humor, but it was at least an attempt. He then asked Sirius a question Dan pretty much knew the answer to. I suppose Harry spending Christmas again with us is out of the question. Having him and Padma in the house made last year our best Christmas ever. He knew Harry and Hermione would want to spend the holiday together. Not seeing Hermione at Christmas would be really hard to take. He didn't know how Emma would cope with that scenario. I would say that was a definite no. It will take more than a few months to work on Barchoke. At the moment he wouldn't let Harry enter your house, never mind stay under your roof. You need to have both Harry and Hermione wanting to stay first, and that's not going to be easy. This is going to be a slow, painful process, and you need to remember something at all times. I made the mistake of treating Harry like a kid. He burned my ass and then threatened to go to Bill for advice. The cheeky bugger then asked me what my intentions were toward Henrika. He may be only 12 in years, but he's been raised in an entirely different culture. Sometimes he acts more mature than I do. This found total agreement from Emma. Sitting, talking to Augusta at the Black Sea confirmed that she couldn't believe the difference in Neville, and put it all down to his friends. They may be a group of 4, but we all know who the leader of the group is. Yes, the baby-faced Genghis Khan that I have to get down on my knees and apologize to. Sirius had another worry, one that meeting Dan stopped him confirming. I just hope they're okay together. This was actually the first time they've been apart since they met a year ago today. This actually drew a weak smile from Emma. I don't think you need worry about that, Sirius. I doubt you'll be able to slip a sheet of paper between them all the way to Scotland. Neither looked like letting the other go anytime soon. They were still holding on to each other while they waited on their friends' reactions to their story. You're bonded. You actually blood bonded. Hermione could only nod at her friend, worried about the disbelief in Padma's voice. Hermione needn't have worried. With a squeal of delight she shot across the compartment and had both of them in a headlock while bouncing with joy. Oh, I wish I could have seen it. Did you actually glow? We watched the memory back. The silver glow shot up our arms. By the time it covered us, it had turned to gold. This saw Padma stagger drunkenly backward to her seat. The disbelief was back in full force. Gold? Neville just had to interrupt. Okay, I should be getting used to not knowing everything around here. So, could you give a guy a break? I have no idea what you three are talking about. Neville, I know what it means to a goblin, but Padma seems to have a different explanation here. I've heard what it used to mean, Harry. The more of your body that glowed, the stronger the bond. Figures you two would glow all over, but gold was supposed to be a myth. Hermione was all over her now. Here was knowledge to be learned, knowledge that concerned Harry and her. Okay, Padma, give. What do you know and where did you hear it? Oh, that used to be the way people married, still do in some Indian provinces. It fell out of favor because everyone at the ceremony could see how well the couple was suited. Imagine a big wedding. Hundreds of guests and then the bride and groom's hands barely glow. Harry interrupted. That's exactly why the goblins use it. We mate for life. You need to know that you are compatible. A goblin bonding where hands barely glowed would see the couple discussing if they wanted to formalize the bond. If their hands didn't heal at once, no bond was said to have existed. No, Harry, that's exactly my point. When marriages became more about arrangements and less about bonds, it became embarrassing when the ceremony clearly said these two people weren't suitable to be together. They wanted the arrangement more than the bond, so it fell by the wayside. It was a still puzzled Neville who asked a question, an action he immediately regretted. Did you two formalize your bond? Both Harry and Hermione were now wearing blushes that would stop a train. Padma decided to go for a third, so Mock whispered the piece of information. Neville was missing. A couple formalizes their bond by having sex together after the ceremony. Do you think they've formalized their bond yet? Neville easily now outshone his two friends as Padma burst into fits of laughter. Patil, you're lucky I don't have my sword. It's in my trunk, Hermione, so don't let that stop you. Padma was now squealing with laughter. She still took that laughter into the next compartment as Hermione fished out her sword. That girl could be scary. Their fun was interrupted by Susan arriving with invitations for them. I got handed mine and they knew we were friends, so I also got the job of passing these on. Who is this Professor Slughorn? Harry quickly scanned the scroll and then made his mind up even quicker. I have no idea, Susan. If he thinks I would even consider spending time with him rather than Hermione, he's not nearly as smart as he thinks he is. Harry slid the compartment window back and posted the unwanted invitation straight out it. Before he could close it, there was a shout from Neville. Don't be so hasty, Harry. Keep that window open so I can chuck mine out too. Susan shrugged her shoulders and then did the same with her invitation. I would rather spend the time with my friends. The trolley lady then appeared and Harry got sweets for everyone. It was fun watching Colin, Luna and Ginny play the wizarding form of Russian roulette, though with Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, instead of a loaded revolver. With a copy of Rita's book finding its way into many of the compartments, it was probably the quietest trip to Hogwarts in the history of the Express. It was also easy to spot those compartments that had a copy. They would be jam-packed with students, with even more crowded around the door, listening as the occupants took turns at reading their precious copy out loud. That was until they would come to a revelation so shocking they couldn't read any more. The book would then be passed on to the person sitting next to them. By the time the Express pulled into Hogsmeade, Dumbledore's dirty laundry had been well and truly aired. Since Henrika had also turned up at the castle with copies, the staff would also be well acquainted with the book too. Albus thought he'd been prepared for the worst. Turns out he wasn't even close. His father dying in Azkaban after being sent there for attacking Muggles. Ariana, Abe, and even his brief relationship with Gellert. All were plastered across page after page of unmitigated horror. The horror, though, was unrelenting, as it also told Tom Riddle's story, and the part he had played in it, from taking his Hogwarts letter to that orphanage, to teaching him for 7 years. The part that was a real dagger in his heart was where it told of Severus hearing the prophecy, and accurately described what happened next. The events of Halloween 1981 were depicted here more accurately than Albus had thought possible. All was laid bare as even more suspicion was heaped upon him. He was the one who suggested the Fidelius, sent Hagrid to take baby Harry away, dropped him off on his relative's doorstep, and then did nothing to stop the boy's godfather being sent to Azkaban without a trial. That Horcruxes were then mentioned really chilled his blood. That the book admitted Harry had one under a scar the killing curse left, one that the goblins quickly removed, was more black marks against Albus Dumbledore. That he'd left the boy who lived on a Muggle doorstep with a Horcrux in his head was the conclusion every reader would reach. The Goblin Nation also gave the real reason he found himself barred from Gringotts. That the goblins were openly stating they had spent the last 10 years searching for these abominations, while he did nothing, just increased the depth of shit he was in. What could be the final kicker, though, was, again, in surprisingly accurate detail, a complete account of the entire Quirrell debacle. Albus was sure this book would finish him at both the Ministry and the ICW. Whether he could hold on to Hogwarts was going to be very close. Ideally, he would come out fighting and refute most of the book. Unfortunately, like the company name suggested, every word of it was true. Lucius was happier than he'd been in many months. It was almost too easy. They had all stood there, obviously waiting on someone. More importantly to Lucius, they had been totally oblivious to what was happening around them. He'd taken a massive risk, waiting until the 1st of September, but it had just paid off handsomely. His mood changed the instant he spotted his wife's expression. What the hell had happened now? She slapped a book into his hands, directing him to a certain chapter. Lucius felt the cold hand of fear grip his heart and almost stop it beating. The Dark Lord had created Horcruxes. Lucius remembered the feeling of pride when his master had handed over a most precious item for him to take care of, as well as his disappointment when discovering it was an old blank diary. His first scan, though, told him this item positively reeked of the darkest magic he'd ever seen, so Lucius had hid it away. Now, the very day he discovered it was probably a Horcrux, the diary was in the possession of a carefully chosen victim, and speeding toward Hogwarts, a Hogwarts that held his son and heir. Lucius didn't know if he could survive being this poor the 18 years it would take for a new Malfoy heir to reach 17. He was struggling to last the almost 5 it would take Draco to inherit. If his master returned when he was still poor, Lucius knew none of his family would survive past their first meeting. What had he done? The gang ensured the 3 new first years made it along to where the rest of their yearmates were gathered, waiting by the boats. The new second years then headed for the carriages, both couples in one, with Susan, Hannah, Parvati and Lavender in another. Harry had been hoping his friend would bring the subject up, but was eventually forced to ask, "Neville, how are your parents reacting to the treatment?" Neville appeared rather embarrassed by the question but answered anyway. "The healers are saying it's too soon to say, and Gran keeps telling me not to get my hopes up. The thing is, I think I can see a slight difference. They would normally just sit and stare in front of them. I swear I've seen both of them looking around the room, almost as if wondering where they are. When my mum slipped me her sweet wrapper, I'm sure she squeezed my hand. Gran promised to write, but it's going to be hard waiting until Christmas to see them again." Padma snuggled into his side, trying to offer some comfort. Harry, though, had an idea. What if you didn't have to wait until Christmas? This quickly perked Neville's interest, so Harry laid out the idea he just had. "Hermione and I will be leaving the castle at Halloween again. What if you two come along? The 4 of us could visit both sets of parents." All 3 could see Neville loved the idea of getting to see his mum and dad. Padma easily guessed what the problem was. "We won't expect too much, Neville, but we still want to meet them." Hermione was now cuddling into Harry for a different reason. She needed the comfort of knowing he was there for her. Now they were back together, the multiple implications of the last 10 days were beginning to sink in. "We won't be staying at my house this time, will we?" He kissed her on the forehead before breaking the news he'd struggled to fit into their earlier conversations. "Your dad was waiting for me at the station." Harry could feel Hermione's body stiffen at that news. "What did he want?" "He just wanted a quick word, but you were waiting and I was late. I told him I was in a hurry. He wished me a good year at Hogwarts." Hermione was digesting this when Neville made up his mind. "What if I write to Gran and ask if we can all stay at my house?" He took the 3 wide smiles this idea generated as a yes. Having Harry beside him at their last visit to St. Mungo's had actually helped Neville. He knew both girls were good friends. Neville was starting to think Padma might be more than a good friend, but he would wait and see what this year brought before taking those thoughts any further. Colin appeared disappointed to be sorted into Gryffindor. He went and sat beside Neville. Luna practically floated to the Ravenclaw table, gratefully accepting the position Hermione offered beside her. Ginny was the last first year to be sorted, and stared wistfully at her blonde friend as she joined her brothers at Gryffindor. There was a murmur of dissent as Dumbledore stood. It died as he basically just said tuck in and the food arrived. Padma was telling Morig, Lisa and Mandy about some of the things they'd done during their holiday when Hermione's hand shot to her bag. "Oh, how could I forget? Mum gave me some of the photographs to let you see. Sorry, but it went right out my head." The photographs soon replaced the feast as the center of attention at the Ravenclaw table. When Harry saw the pictures being circulated outside their circle of friends, it was time for a warning. "Guys, none of those photographs featuring the girls or Professor Hobson will be missing after you've seen them, especially the ones taken on various beaches." Harry didn't need to add, or else one glance at how serious he was and everyone got the message. Morag, though, had a cheeky question for the trio. "What about the ones featuring the male hunks? Is it okay to sneak one of them into my bag?" Padma and Hermione answered in stereo. "Hell no." The consensus at the Ravenclaw table was this group had stolen the summer ball. Even the prophet had said so. While it had been such a major highlight in Britain, that same ball now looked like only a very small part of their summer adventure. Roger, though, had a word of warning for the group. "Harry, Professor Slughorn is sitting up there and staring at you. He was really quite miffed you didn't respond to his invitation on the train." "I did respond. We all threw them out the window." This got a few chuckles before he reassured every second year there. We will still have Master Pitsley for potions, and there is no way I'll be going anywhere near Lockhart's class. Poncy Git probably has the classroom walls plastered with pictures of himself. We will have Assistant Ambassador Weasley teaching us defense this year again. This drew some cheers at the table. There was no one swooning over that peacock in Ravenclaw. Harry looked toward the staff table, picking out Henrika. One glance was enough to tell him that she would rather be sitting, having dinner with them. She'd been a great help to Harry over the last 10 days, even keeping his mind occupied by pumping him for information that would end up in her book. Next summer would complete her research, and then she was planning on putting it all together. He was promised a signed copy for his help. Having stayed at Grimmauld for the last week or so, he suspected she might be signing it as Henrika Black by then. When Dumbledore stood at the end of the feast to give his traditional welcome speech, the silence that descended in the hall was anything but respectful. No one was quite sure who moved first, but Penny and Percy appeared to be the instigators. They started their houses moving to their dorms, with Hufflepuff and Slytherin quickly picking up that this was something they wanted to support. Dumbledore's voice faded to silence as every student now had their back to him, making their way out the hall. The staff were also following their students' example. They started leaving too. Within a few moments, the headmaster was the only person left in the hall. Albus was gripping the lectern tightly, trying to rein in his temper. He'd never been shown such disrespect in his entire life. Minerva left the hall, knowing already who her top candidates for next year's head boy and girl were. Harry had asked Helena at the feast if he might have a word with her later. The ghost appeared in his room that night and listened as her champion passed on the warning Dobby had delivered. Not much information for us to react to. In fact, no information at all. Terrible things could mean absolutely anything. I know. What about the wards? Did they detect anything unusual? The Lady Ravenclaw couldn't hide her disgust. The wards are a total mishmash. There is more effort put into making sure muggles can't see the castle than there is to protecting the school. Each headmaster adds their own contribution, leaving a patchwork quilt of meddling instead of the work of art that the founders originally set. Harry was by no means an expert, but he understood the basics of wards. Even getting rid of Dumbledore and having goblins rebuild the wards might not help. If the threat was already inside the castle, a new ward scheme wouldn't do any good. Helena promised to warn the other ghosts, portraits and elves to keep a sharper lookout. It felt good to be running together again. Harry and Hermione were taking advantage of the good weather to follow the path around the Black Lake. They would be relegated to the room in Hogwarts soon enough. Having no one to fence with during their forced separation, Hermione was keen to cross blades again. Since they both now had armor, Harry agreed to using their actual swords. They were practicing in the courtyard and Harry was delighted at the progress Hermione was making. Holding her own in that very real duel had certainly done her confidence with a blade no harm at all. They were eventually interrupted by their head of house. "I can see you've been practicing, Miss Granger. Then again, you have a very good teacher. The news from Gringotts pleased me greatly. Can I assume you will be keeping that quiet for now?" "Yes, Professor. Only our family and closest friends know. Hermione, we've got quite an audience." They did indeed. Now that they had stopped fencing, Colin thought it would be safe enough to take a picture. It caught Hermione's surprise perfectly. There must have been 50 people watching the golden couple fence. Quite a few of them had surprise expressions too. Even on holiday, both had kept up their exercising. Combined with their tan and the clothes they wore for exercising, they cut a very unusual sight for witches and wizards. "Are we running late? We usually finish before everyone gets up." "It's the first day of term, Miss Granger. Most students are up early today. That's actually why I came out here, to give you your timetables. You have potions first thing, and Professor Slughorn is so looking forward to getting you in his class. I would hate for our new head of Slytherin to be disappointed." Catching on at once what Master Flitwick was hinting at, Harry whipped out his knife and then used it to alter a coin-sized disc on his knife holster that Hermione thought was for decoration. After moving a few symbols about, knife and sword were put away. We better get a move on, Hermione. We need to shower, change, and have breakfast before Master Pitsley gets here. You know he hates to be kept waiting." Hermione was too busy solving a puzzle to move right away. "Is that your emergency system for contacting your father?" "Yeah, there was a good chance either defense or potions would be our first lesson. I just alerted him it was potions. There is no way I was going to Lockhart's class. Edred or Moonlight could probably beat him up. Master Pitsley can take a copy of our timetable back to Gringotts with him." Their head of house was now laughing. "I don't think Professor Lockhart would let you anywhere near his class, Centurion. He's terrified of you, and probably Hermione now too. I saw him watching you two fence as I came down here. His face matched the color of his hideous robes, chartreuse. I believe he called them. Lockhart avoiding them was good news in their book." Both quickly headed off to Ravenclaw for those much-needed showers. Padma and Luna were waiting by the time Hermione made it down to the common room. "I'm hearing you and your boyfriend put on quite the show this morning. Talk of the castle, no less." "Well, if you had gotten your lazy backside out of your bed, you wouldn't have to listen to hearsay." Luna, though, had a question. "Why did you call Harry her boyfriend when you know they've bonded?" Both girls now staring at Luna made her think she'd done something wrong. "I'm sorry, was it supposed to be a secret?" She felt a hand settle gently on her shoulder and turned to see Harry smiling at her. "It's okay, Luna. You just surprised them. Can you tell us how you found out?" "Oh, I can see it. I've always been able to see things others miss. I can see the bond between you and also the one you share with your two best friends. There's no way you wouldn't have told them about the bond. That's why I was surprised when Padma called you Hermione's boyfriend. I can keep a secret, Harry. Do you want me to?" "Yes, please, Luna. Hermione and I are very happy about it, but some others might not think the same. We'll be staying as boyfriend and girlfriend until we're a few years older." That will be when I'm 38, if my father has his way." "Oh, was that who I saw talking to Sirius? He looked really discombobulated." This drew looks from the other three, so Luna explained. "My daddy used to always use the saying that someone didn't know their ass from their elbow. Mummy didn't like me using daddy's expression, so she taught me that great word. It means the same, and since Mummy taught it to me, I use it every chance I get. I think daddy acts more and more discombobulated just to hear me say it." Padma now had her arm around the girl, leading the little blonde in the direction of breakfast. "Luna, you're going to fit right in. These two are much too serious. You're exactly what they need." Harry now had his arm around Hermione. "You okay?" "I think so. Now we're back together. The entire thing just seems like a bad dream. I've never fought with either of my parents before, nothing beyond a mild sulk. I don't know what to do next. Talk to Henrika or Padma. I'm afraid neither Neville or I will be much use to you on that front." They followed Padma and Luna out of Ravenclaw before Hermione told him what was really bothering her. "I know, Harry, and that's what really got to me." Neville was so excited at the mere suggestion, his mother might have squeezed his hand, yet I haven't spoken to my dad since that night. She had her head down in shame as she told him the next bit. "I actually attacked him with my practice sword. He was about to start on a 'you will talk to me' rant, and I just exploded. Yes, I was angry. But he didn't deserve that. It's only since we got back together that I'm beginning to see both sides of this. If he was talking to Sirius, then at least there's hope. My father was angrier than I've ever seen him at the incident. We'll need to keep those two apart for a while. We've almost got Halloween planned. That just leaves us the Christmas holidays to worry about. I know one thing for sure. I'll be spending it with you. It's just the where we need to sort out. I hope it will get better, now that everyone has had time to cool down." Hermione took some comfort from that, and they were smiling as they entered the hall. The young couple were immediately approached by Fred and George. Both wanted to check their potions classes still matched, and that Master Pitsley would be teaching them again this year. They headed back to their own table, delighted the answer to both their questions was yes. After enjoying their breakfast, the arrival of Master Pitsley revealed at least one lie Rita's book had missed. Perhaps if they'd gone with the Halloween publishing date, it would have been included. With Snape falling into their hands, the final piece of the jigsaw revealed itself. They were also certain Dumbledore would have gotten suspicious if Barchoke had postponed their meeting again, and there was no way they wanted him anywhere near their Horcrux program. Slughorn exploded loudly at Dumbledore, watching the students as they rose to accompany Master Pitsley to their potions class. "Dumbledore, you promised me Lily's boy would be in my class. You told me it was only because he didn't like Snape that Harry arranged a private tutor. Henrico and Minerva both assured me Harry wouldn't be stopping his private tuition, but I believed you. Shows what a fool I am. All the top potion students in second year and the 2 top fourth years are being taught by someone else. This is not what I signed on for. With today's prophet full of excerpts from that blasted book, Albus really didn't need this now. I'm sorry, Horace. My hands are tied." Harry clearly stated his reasons for not taking potions in front of everyone. "I assumed that, since I had addressed that problem, he would take potions with you. I am not allowed to speak with the boy, but will ask Minerva if she will intercede on your behalf. I fear I must point out, though, the facility has always existed inside Hogwarts for students to hire personal tutors. I understand he won't be taking the defense course either." Horace left to take his class, a class bereft of Ravenclaws and, more importantly, the Order of Merlin award-winning boy who lived. The boy who was the only reason Horace Slughorn returned to the castle. Roger flopped down at the table for lunch. The look of disgust on his face was hard to miss. "Well, that was an utter waste of a morning. One lesson and I already know Lockhart is the most useless defense professor we've ever had." Harry was trying not to laugh. He really was. How could you know that in one period? He started off with a quiz, but every single question was about him. How the hell is knowing Gilderoy Lockhart's favorite color going to help me pass a defense exam? I hardly think that's likely to appear on any OKWL exam paper. Then the Ponce acted out a scene from his book. Funnily enough, not once did he take his wand out. Has anyone seen if he actually has one? They would have suspected Roger was having them on if the rest of the fourth-year claws weren't wearing the exact same expression of disgust. Luna's first lesson had been charms with her head of house. She thought the class was brilliant. Defense was now looking certain to be a disappointment. "Harry, when will you know about those extra lessons?" "We've got history next, Luna, so I'll talk to Professor Hobson then. We already have extra lessons ourselves every weekend, and astronomy on a Thursday, so we'll need to look at one of the remaining evenings. I'll ask the professor which suits her best and let you know. Can anyone come to these lessons?" "Roger, you can't be serious. You're fourth year now." "A fourth year who's had one bad defense professor after another. Reading books can only take you so far, Harry. How are we meant to pass a practical exam if no one ever teaches you that stuff? You had the person getting paid to teach us defense flat on his back just by grabbing his pinky. I also saw the both of you fence this morning. I may be a fourth year, but you or Hermione would certainly kick my ass in a duel. I want to learn, and anyone here older than me will have suffered through the same shitty teachers I've had, only for longer. Penny raving about Percy's brother as a teacher is good enough for me. I don't want to wait until a month or so before my exams and hope McGonagall can coax him to come to Hogwarts for a few weekends. I'm perfectly happy taking pointers from his star pupils. You do know these two get up practically in the middle of the night, run for miles and then practice every bloody day. Even on holiday, you get woken by these two going at each other with swords. That's why they're good, Roger. They work their asses off at it. Not helping, Padma. Hermione could see that, instead of discouraging anyone, Padma had unwittingly just given them a huge endorsement. It wasn't just Roger who was looking in their direction now. Half the house appeared ready to sign up there and then. Harry offered a partial solution. I promised the first years I would help, and we couldn't really run a mixed class at the moment, since the likes of Colin hasn't a clue about anything. Professor Flitwick has helped me with my training before. He's awesome with either a wand or a blade in his hand. Why don't you approach him with your concerns? He is our head of house, and a far better teacher than I'll ever be. If he knocks you back, we'll see if something can be worked out. The relief washed over the table like a comforting wave. It was decided to wait until the weekend, just to give more of them the opportunity to confirm Lockhart was a shit teacher. and then a house delegation would approach Professor Flitwick with their concerns. If he said no, they always had an Order of Merlin winner waiting in the wings to fall back on. Henrika was relieved to see Harry and Hermione had slipped directly back into the two lovely people that she was delighted to know. Henrika had practically to take her wand to Sirius. He was all for storming the Grangers and having it out with Dan, pointing out that Barchoke was playing it smarter and that they held all the cards, caused him to stop and think. Hermione couldn't be withdrawn from Hogwarts without Barchoke's agreement, something that would never be forthcoming unless Hermione wanted it. The idea that Dan would deliberately hurt these two was a non-starter. Even a certain enraged goblin didn't think that was ever a possibility. That meant this mess may take some time to sort out, but that Harry and Hermione would be back together come the 1st of September. Now that everyone had a little time to cool off, she was hopeful some progress could be made. She genuinely liked Hermione's parents, and she considered Dan's actions to be really out of character for the man she'd come to know. Seeing these two smiling again was well worth giving up one of her evenings. They decided a Tuesday fitted best. It would certainly be better than having Lockhart stare at her. She thought it was time to ensure he knew Harry was her employer, and just how protective he was of his employees. It was either that, or let him see what a transformed Veela was capable of, a fireball shot at his neither. Regents should certainly put an end to any amorous thoughts. Gilderoy had figured his time in Hogwarts would be spent being fawned on by all the young witches, and associating with the only other wizard who was nearly as famous as him. The boy who lived had turned out to be a major disappointment. The goblin-raised brat was practically a savage. Watching that girl of his battle against him with those deadly goblin swords had his delicate stomach almost in his mouth. He could certainly taste bile. That there were very few young witches swooning around him was a bone of contention too. One of the main reasons for that deficit had just entered the Great Hall, and Gilderoy wasn't impressed. Red hair drawn back in a ponytail, dragon tooth earring, with the same animal probably giving up its skin for that jacket and boots. This was no refined gentleman. He was barely a step above being considered a scuff. To make matters worse, he was obviously on good terms with the boy who lived, and his friends, with second-year defense classes twice a week, and their extra tuition at the weekends. This Weasley was going to be in the castle 4 days every week. This was far too often for Gilderoy's liking. It was hard to miss all the female attention this scruff was attracting too, the attention that should have been heading in Gilderoy Lockhart's direction. Hogwarts wasn't all bad news though. Dumbledore had been summoned to the ministry and everyone knew he was finished. This could provide a golden opportunity to exploit. It seems only a matter of time before Dumbledore would be booted out of the castle, and Gilderoy fancied a certain promotion as being a nice easy job for himself. His picture, posed while sitting behind the headmaster's desk at Hogwarts, would look grand on the back of his next book. He read about the troll incident last year. If only he'd been here then. A few memory charms, and he could have gotten a book about saving the boy who lived from a rampaging beast, out for a taste of young human flesh. He would have to keep his eyes open and see if there were any situations he could exploit this year, and work on his speech for the press. After the fall of Dumbledore, the young witches and wizards of Britain need a figure they can trust and look up to. How could I resist a calling like that? My days of roaming the world and solving its problems may have to be put on hold, but nothing is more important than ensuring our youngsters grow into the fine young witches and wizards of tomorrow. Gilderoy thought that should do as a starting point. Albus had no defense, so attacked. He attacked a group the old wizard was sure were responsible for all his troubles. He was using a tactic that had worked for him in the past, provide another target for people to vent their anger on. Members of the Whizzing Gummitai have been dragged here before you to answer questions. What this chamber needs to consider, though, is whether it is the right questions that are being asked, or should I say the right person being asked them. For the last few days, Wizarding Britain has been agog over a quite scandalous book. The questions that should be getting asked concern the author, a witch sacked from her post at the Prophet for blatant lies, and her backers. My own investigations have turned up some startling facts. What we have here is nothing more than a goblin-backed plot to destabilize the Ministry of Magic. Albus felt euphoric at the mayhem that followed this statement. He actually thought that he might just pull this off. That was until his gaze fell upon the Bones bitch. She was far too calm, and that faint smirk was a dead giveaway. She obviously knew something Albus didn't. Amelia stood and the chamber eventually grew silent, waiting to hear what she had to add to the debate. Like Barchoke, she thought Dumbledore guilty of multiple crimes. Unfortunately, neither she nor the goblin had any tangible proof. Amelia decided she would need to settle for stripping Dumbledore of the one thing he really wanted: power. Fellow members, over the years I have come to realize that is sometimes what Albus Dumbledore doesn't say that really matters. While I agree a certain book is scandalous, I certainly do not believe, nor has he claimed it to be libellous. My own investigations have yet to uncover one lie in the entire publication. A shout came from the chamber. But the goblins, it done us a huge favor. The only person here who thinks Albus Dumbledore getting booted out of the Wizengamot would destabilize the ministry is Albus Dumbledore. Personally, I think their investigations have done the ministry nothing but good. Crouch was clearly a criminal who has now paid for those deeds. This very chamber saw to that. I was actually one of a privileged few who was given a copy of this book well before it was released to the public. This was done purely to ensure the ministry would be prepared for any ramifications its publication might produce. Where Dumbledore sees plots, I see a nation friendly to the ministry, and going out of their way to protect that relationship. Amelia stared down Dumbledore as she delivered the final nails into his political coffin. As to the authenticity of Miss Skeeter's latest work, I can and will offer my personal opinion. Unlike some, though, my opinion is formed from investigation. In forming my opinion, I interviewed Lord Black, Ambassador Barchoke, his son, Harry, Severus Snape. Albus was aghast at this. You spoke to Severus? Where is he? How is he? He was fine and content. I also spoke to your brother, though I doubt if that's the proper description for that particular event. Mentioning you and your late sister in the same sentence saw Aberforth practically throw me out. He left me in no doubt, though, who he blamed for his sister Ariana's untimely death. This saw Albus fall back into his seat as if he'd been physically struck. Abe had certainly never hidden that view from him. Albus had the crooked nose that reminded him of his brother's opinion every time he looked in a mirror. He'd refused to have it fixed for that very purpose. To hear that opinion broadcast to the entire Wizengamot was like a dagger through his heart. Amelia then buried the dead body his political career had just become. I again have to state that in my personal and professional opinion, the book that started all this is factually accurate. My investigations could find not one untruth in the entire publication. The voting to oust him was still ongoing when Albus rose from his chair and shuffled from the chamber, a defeated figure. The last thing he heard was a member nominating Amelia Bones for his recently vacated post. It was hearing Amelia's nomination that saw Cornelius take his first action of the day. While I applaud the member for nominating a very able candidate, can I ask this chamber to consider something no one seems willing to talk about? The Dark Lord who calls himself Voldemort is not gone. We now have this confirmed from multiple sources. We first heard this almost a year ago. Unlike Dumbledore, we have not been idle. Under Madam Bones' leadership, our Aura department has been quietly expanding to meet this perceived threat. I have no doubt Madam Bones would make a tremendous chief witch, or even Minister of Magic. I for one sleep better in my bed knowing she's head of the DMLE. Cornelius received her backing on this matter immediately. I thank the minister for his kind words and would ask that I remain in my current position until the Death Eater problem is finally behind us. Know this, our history will remember that Crouch, Bagnold and Dumbledore didn't deal with the problem when they had the chance. It is our intention that same history will look on Fudge, Bones, and our new head of this chamber in a more positive light. I wouldn't want anyone walking into that position without knowing what is in front of us. It may be painful and even bloody, but we are determined to get the job done right this time. Even those of a darker disposition were forced to join in with the standing ovation afforded the minister and his head of law enforcement for their brave stance on this matter. Some considered it foolhardy too, but today was neither the time nor place to express those views. As Amelia had hoped, stating their aims up front had immediately forced those who would oppose their views take a step back, leaving the way clear for a moderate to be elected to the post. Both she and Cornelius were pleased to see someone like Amos Diggory become chief warlock. They could work with him to reach their goals. After running the quartet through their Saturday morning lesson, Bill was pleasantly surprised at how well they came through it. Padma and Neville especially were reaping the benefits from a summer spent traipsing around the world, swimming and playing physical games. Hermione also told him that a friend of Sirius's and Harry's parents had been giving them some defense lessons too. Not having to hurry back to Gringotts, Bill was taking the opportunity to spend lunchtime with his younger siblings. Now that Ron wasn't under a probation order, he was keen to see his youngest brother didn't slip into his bad old ways. Bill was also desperate to discover how Ginny was getting on in the castle. He was delighted to hear she'd been somewhat adopted into Harry's group. Ginny was certainly looking forward to Tuesday evening, and lessons from Harry. This certainly earned a smile from her eldest brother. The gang of four were running some stuff past me today to see if I thought it was suitable. I think you'll enjoy your lesson, Ginny. Bill certainly didn't enjoy seeing the re-emergence of Ron the Prat. Bloody waste of time, if you ask me. Professor Lockhart knows his stuff. He had me help him with his demonstration. Those 4 Slytherins were so jealous. The professor obviously recognizes real talent when he sees it. The other 4 who'd also suffered Lockhart's lessons were about to refute all Ron's claims when Bill held his hand up. Just what was this demonstration, Ron? His excitement obvious. Ron couldn't wait to describe his moment in the sun. Oh. The professor was using me to reenact how he fought the Wagga Wagga werewolf from his book Wandering with Werewolves. I was playing the part of the werewolf. I had to roar and everything. The professor had me in a headlock before casting the hormone charm, making me human again. Bill had a simple question for Ron, and what did you learn? The question was so simple it had Ron totally flummoxed. What do you mean?
When you teach a class, Ron, it's important to have an objective for your students, that they learn a certain spell or technique during each lesson. So, what did you learn?
I dunno. I was in a headlock. How was I supposed to see what was going on? Percy was actually laughing at that. I think Bill just proved his point rather well. The twins then got in on the act too. Hey Ron, werewolves don't roar. No, they howl. You saw Harry put Lockhart down. Does he look like someone who could get a werewolf in a headlock? Bill decided to put Ron out of his misery. I also think you meant the fabled homorphous charm. It's rumored to return a werewolf into human form and be hideously difficult to cast. It certainly couldn't be done with a werewolf's head tucked into your armpit, ignoring the fact that only the legend of this charm exists, and it's certainly well beyond the capabilities of any second year to cast. If Lockhart can cast it, I'd eat my boots. Faced with this mountain of evidence against him, Ron reverted to his favorite tactic. Ignore it. Well, it's not as if I'm likely to meet a werewolf, is it? Harry spent part of the summer with one. The words were out before Ginny realized what she'd said. With all her brothers now looking to her for more information, she obliged. They were talking about it at breakfast this morning. Turns out that's who taught Harry that grip. You know, the one that saw Lockhart on the floor. He thought Mooney would have a great laugh when he heard about it. Ginny stopped as her twin brothers shot out their chairs and headed straight for Sirius Black, who was having lunch with Professor Hobson and smiling in Harry's direction. Hey, Padfoot. You've been holding out on us? With Master Pitsley and Bill already having visited Hogwarts, Sirius had their assurances, along with Henrika's, that Harry and Hermione were fine. It took spending some time with them today, though, for Sirius to really relax, and now he had a promise to keep. Today's lesson had concentrated on politics, and how they affected the houses of Potter and Longbottom. With Hermione set to be Lady Potter one day, and Padma at least a contender for the Longbottom position, it was a lesson all 4 enjoyed. As the lesson finished, Sirius produced the letter. Hermione, your father asked me if I would deliver this. Before even considering to give you this letter, I demanded to know why he'd done something so out of character. I've since had a few long chats with both your parents. My mum was never part of this serious. I know, Hermione, just as you're smart enough to know any action you take will affect both of them. All I was going to ask was that you consider this before responding. Talk it over with your friends. Henrika and I are also here if you need us. Padma had a hand on each of their shoulders now. Stay here and read it together. We'll see you later. As soon as they were alone, the room provided a sofa for both to sit on. It was with trembling hands. Hermione opened the letter. She had to sit it on her lap to read because her hands were shaking so much. The young couple read it together. My dearest darling daughter, this is by far and away the most difficult letter I've ever had to write. I watched some memories that terrified the life out of me, and then I reacted very badly to them. My actions that night were inexcusable and hurt the two most important people in the world to me, you and your mother. For that, I am truly deeply sorry. I'm going to assume that Harry is reading this with you, and take this opportunity to apologize to him too, for all the hurt I've caused both him and his father. When I watched the memory of you attacking Master Sharpshard earlier in the year, I saw you assume Harry was in danger and act without thinking. It would now appear this is a trait you inherited from me. I want you to know your actions that day pale into insignificance when placed next to my own colossal act of stupidity. I assumed a threat to my family and acted without thinking. Had I that evening to live over again, I would have been there all night asking Barchoke question after question, and then welcomed Harry to the family like I should have done. Instead, my actions hurt a great many people, including some I was beginning to regard as extended family. I don't have that night to live over though, so all that is left is to admit how wrong I was and ask your forgiveness. To you both. I would like to say that it is certainly a long-held dream of mine to walk my daughter down the aisle on her wedding day. Knowing that Harry will now be the one waiting on my daughter at the other end of that aisle makes me happier than I can possibly say here. I'm not naive enough to expect things to instantly go back to the way they were before, knowing respect and trust must be earned. I threw all of that away in one moment of panic and madness. I'm more than prepared to work at building those back up to a level that will allow us to once more be what I really, really want. A family, your loving father. Hermione was in tears by the end of the letter. Harry just held her close. After a few moments she'd recovered enough to speak. What do you think? When Harry didn't answer right away, Hermione lifted her head to see the concern on his face. Harry, I want to hear what you think, not what you think I want to hear. We need to be totally honest with each other here. This is probably the most important discussion we've ever had. I need you to be honest with me first, Hermione. Your dad mentioned that day you attacked Master Sharpshard. If you had that event to live over, what would you do differently? Well, I would hope to put up a better showing. Harry almost smiled at that. Are you saying that you would still attack? There is no way I could stand there and watch. That's why I practice as hard. This earned her a kiss before Harry continued. That day those girls had you and Padma trapped in that bathroom. Nothing would have stopped me rushing to you both. McGonagall gave me that detention, more because we both understood I would do exactly the same again. That's what worries me about this. What will he do the next time something happens? I couldn't let him take you again. A shudder passed through both of them at the mere thought of something like this happening again. In goblin culture, I am now your mate, and also responsible for you. Clearly this is something we need to discuss with your parents. Ideally setting boundaries that we can all live with until we're older. Forcibly dragging us apart crossed way over any line that would be acceptable to me, and I hope you... Hermione could hardly disagree with that. She'd made her position pretty clear to her father since that night. The only reason neither my father nor I reacted that night was because he wasn't aware of a line's existence, something my father had intended to spend time discussing. We should have sat down like a family and discussed how we were going to move forward with this. Now it will probably end up more of a business negotiation. Hermione reacted the only way she could to that remark with shock and horror. No, Harry, I will not have my parents treated like that. My mum and dad will be treated as family, or this goblin magical muggle relationship can't possibly work. I want my family back, my entire family. I've heard over and over how important family is to goblins. Well, my mum and dad are now your family too. My father is as proud as any goblin, yet that letter has him practically groveling. I feel sick inside for being the cause of that. You're forever quoting goblin culture to me. Are you aware that it is customary in our culture to ask a girl's father for his daughter's hand in marriage? We went ahead and jumped right into a blood bond, without consulting either set of parents. There were a lot of mistakes made that day. I don't think any of us were really blameless. Harry couldn't look at Hermione as he asked the question he never thought would pass his lips. Do you regret bonding with me? Hermione now lifted Harry's head before reassuring him with a kiss of her own. You are mine and I am yours. That is not going to change, Harry. But we are certainly both going to have to if we want to make this work. He held her close and repeated the words that changed their lives forever. You are mine and I am yours. We've faced cultural differences before, Hermione, but I don't know how we're going to get past this one. In my heart I am a goblin. The need to protect my mate is incredibly strong. The nation won't expect us to be married until of age, so that lets us set our own timetable. I see us as head boy and girl sharing that accommodation as husband and wife. This had Harry's arms tightening around her, clearly showing his approval for that idea. My dad is not a bad man, Harry. He watched our bonding and just panicked. We can all learn from this and stop anything like this happening again. I believe that. Do you? Of course I don't believe he's a bad man, far less a bad father. It's now clear to see how he could panic. I don't think any of us were thinking clearly that night. I have just spent a wonderful summer with what I now consider my extended family. Mum, Dad, your father, Sirius, Hendrika, with Neville and Padma in there too somewhere. The locations were spectacular, but it was the company that made it so special. That is our family now, Harry, the family that it's apparently going to be up to us to put back together. Harry's thoughts drifted to Emma's hug and then kissing them both goodbye at the station. The sensation of how warm and comforting that had made him feel inside swept through him once more. How could he even consider letting that go? He now understood Hermione's stance on this matter and was more than willing to stand beside her. Emma Granger was certainly someone you would fight to keep in your life. Emma, though, wasn't the problem. To get both of our fathers in the same room without at least a shouting match is going to take something really devious. Remembering Sirius's warning from earlier just hardened her resolve. Hermione had seen kids at her old primary school whose parents had divorced. They were passed around each parent in a business agreement drawn up by strangers. Weekends and holidays became nothing more than allocated slots on a calendar. That wasn't going to happen in her family, her now extended family, not if she could help it. Well, then you'll just have to show me how devious your goblin side really is. If we have one argument, does that mean we're over? She felt Harry stiffen in terror beside her at that very thought. She drew him into a hug to comfort both of them. Harry, the answer to that question will always be no bloody chance. We will argue, possibly even fight. We're both too stubborn not to. All I was meaning was we would get past it, just like we'll get past this. They needed a few moments just holding each other, just to confirm that we're still good. Hermione had been right. This was their most serious conversation to date. When she summed up what they hoped to achieve, though, it didn't seem impossible. We know what we need from this, and it's actually not that much. It shouldn't be too hard convincing our parents to agree to something that was practically their idea in the first place. We've been dealing with the differences between our cultures since we first met. I will not see our family split by one mistake. We need to put our heads together and solve this. We both need my mum, dad, and your father in our lives. We shouldn't settle for anything less. Harry was admiring how expressive Hermione's eyes were when she got really passionate about something. They practically sparkled, and that was when the idea struck.